We're rolling now.
Okay.
The light is very good, actually.
Great.
Okay, so who are you and what are you running for?
The long answer or the short answer?
The shortest one.
Okay.
Just your name.
My name is Breen, Ouellette, and I'm running for City Council in Vancouver.
And what's your party?
It's COPE, the Coalition of Progressive Electors.
Why is Cope kind of a funny name for younger people?
Well, it's got a slang insinuation when somebody's whining about something that they should just, they shouldn't be whining about. You just tell them to cope.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you turned it around.
Yeah. Well, I tell people now, we want rent control, and the landlords are crying about that. So I just tell them to cope. And the mansion owners don't want us to tax their houses with additional taxes to pay for affordable housing, but we need affordable housing, so I tell them to cope harder.
Yeah. Whoa, with the scream in the background, getting cheered on.
Rowdy tennis players.
What are your top 3 priorities?
People, and people.
Amazing.
And the way we do that is through rent control. Through the mansion tax, which Jean almost got put through in the last session. And in a very particular way, we do that through the reason that I agreed to run for COPE, which is we get an independent officer of City Council, known as the representative for Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. And she's able to help protect those marginalized people in the city.
Okay, what does housing mean to you? Because it seems like it's been used in a few different ways. Like, for example, Kennedy came out with a kind of a sob story about his father losing his job and then losing their house, and he didn't wish that upon anyone. And for me, I found that really offensive from the work that I'm doing, because he's conflating losing, defaulting on your mortgage with living in a tent on the street. So, like if you just looked at the text of that, housing now, blah, 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 it seems like a good thing, but it's not really talking about the most emergent side of the housing crisis.
Yeah.
So, yeah, could you speak on that?
Well, so, it's really interesting. All the other parties, as far as I can tell, they're talking about housing. And we talk about rent control. We talk about taxation, which are not, they're popular with renters and it's popular with non-homeowners, but they're really negative things with homeowners and landlords. And we invite a lot of scrutiny and pushback because of that. But the reality is that for someone who's living rough, living on the street, they're not going to be made a homeowner by anyone, anywhere at all.
Yeah,
and
very
so
well said.
When you're talking about housing and like we're going to build more houses for people to buy, well, I'm sorry, but the people down here on the downtown east side on Hastings, they're not buying anything, and you're not buying it for them. So let's get real. When we talk about rent control, we're trying to prevent more people being out on the street living rough. And when we talk about a mansion tax, we're talking about a tiny little extra bit of tax on people that own houses over $5 million and $10 million.
Seems fair.
Yeah, and that $230 million a year would go to affordable social public co-op housing, the works.
Yeah, and that's a realistic budget for such a thing, like the money is there.
Yes.
I feel like politicians always speak about budgets like
Cutting. They want to cut them.
Yeah, but they speak like they're immovable amounts of money that are in a certain fucking lockdown building somewhere.
Yeah.
And you're like, the parks budget can't touch the streets budget, can't touch the whatever. And then, we have this capital borrowing, and you're like, where? So how many hundreds of millions is the capital borrowing plan? It's crazy.
You know, I don't have that number on me.
But
right now,
it's up there. Like one
Yeah.
of them's like 145 million or
Yeah,
something
they're big-
for
they're-
parks. So it's just like
really big numbers.
but budgets can be moved, and I think that's also something that COVID taught us about our governments, is that everything can change
Yeah.
if it absolutely has to. And that you know, urgency is something that really is more attainable than people think. You know, like it's hard, you know, like as at my age, to see the downtown east side over the last couple of decades and it not change. It makes you think it must be insurmountable. That must be the problem. There's just no way to solve this.
Well, we're told that. We keep getting told by politicians, by bureaucrats, by the wealthy who have the money to keep messaging this at people, that we can't raise more money. We have to cut services, or we have to steal from this hand to, you know, pay this other hand. It just doesn't. It's not true. You know what it is it's the ultra wealthy, you know, $75 million homeowner Chip Wilson doesn't want to pay more, but he's more than happy to funnel $400,000 into this election and try to like bypass election laws that prevent him from doing that. He's got $100 million.
Oh, so these are chip checks that are going around.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
He put $100 million toward Parks Canada, and that's great. Parks Canada is great, but if he's got that kind of money, he can pay an extra $1 million on his $75 million mansion in taxes.
Yeah,
and
I don't even understand why that's worth arguing about. That's like a piece of jewelry to him.
People argue like you wouldn't believe. So at the last session, Jean Swanson, our incumbent councillor for Cope, she put in that mansion tax as a motion. It split 5-5. The mayor didn't show up, so it failed. If it had gone in, $230 million a year over year. Now, in like context, just a couple months ago, the Prime Minister of Canada promised $2 billion over 10 years for affordable housing in Canada. Vancouver could do more just for our city if we just had the politicians with the courage to say to Chip Wilson, we like all that money you've got, let's put it to better use.
Yeah. Why don't we pool that together if you're going to be the jerk about it? So what are your like more specific plans for homelessness?
Well, literally, you know, we need that split so that we can get the mansion tax in and really start moving towards providing housing first. And are you familiar with Housing First?
Oh, no.
Okay, so it's the idea that the number one priority should be to find a safe place for people to live. Not a shelter, but actual housing like everybody else has. And all the other things that a person may need, you know, sometimes people do have special needs that they need addressed. You make sure that those are available too, but you don't make it like a precondition, like, oh, you're a drug user, you have to get off the drugs before we'll find you housing. Or, oh, you've got mental health issues, we need you to attend a bunch of sessions before we'll even consider trying to find you housing, and then it's going to take forever to do it. There's one city in Canada that has adopted Housing First. Do you know which one it is? You'll be surprised. It's Medicine Hat, Alberta.
Wow.
They adopted Housing First a few years ago, and they completely ended chronic homelessness in their city.
Wow.
Off the board. Yeah.
Wow. To have that research, that proof so close to home is kind of wild.
And because people will say, "Oh, Europe did it, but Europe's different." Well,
people say that, but then they don't do the studies. Like, I know more about what European governments do than most of the officials. Like, it's just kind of something that's tossed out. Like, Denmark can do it. Yeah, call them. Like.
So, you know, really, we need the political will, and we need to stop. Like, one of the things that really worries me about, you know, it's come down to a battle between Kennedy and Ken, and Ken Sim. His platform includes hiring 100 cops and 100 nurses and pairing them up.
And that's ABC, everyone, so do not. It's confusing because in Kem's bio, he doesn't say the things about ABC that are bad, like the extra cops and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You have to go lower down into the council members to see that that's a priority.
Yeah. And so, like, as a former lawyer with the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, I saw in other provinces, you know, through the testimony that was provided, through the information we subpoenaed out of different levels of government, I saw how medical practitioners have been coupled with police in other parts of the country to oppress people who are marginalized. You know, basically the police start to use their medical attached personnel as another way to subdue people while they're being arrested. You know, let's medicate them and then we'll arrest them. You know, so like hold them down, get a needle in her, get a needle in him, and then they complete the arrest. And a person who's been doped up like that has absolutely no chance of being able to understand what's going on. If their rights are being violated, they won't even be able to remember the whole encounter. It's anti-democratic, it's anti-human rights, it's oppressive. It's used to steal children from Indigenous women in this country. I don't want to see that in Vancouver.
No, absolutely not. What do you think has gone wrong in our downtown east side in terms of governance?
Well, when I look at what's been happening, you know, historically in the city for 30, 40 years, and when I talk to, you know, I've talked to former advocate from the city, Judy Graves. Judy's not, you know, she rubs people the wrong way in a lot of ways, but she was one of the foremost experts in the area working for the city back when she was there. You know, she would point to how the federal government got out of housing in the 80s and just stopped providing the funding, and so then there was this gap, right? And over time, more and more people have had a real difficulty finding something they can afford, and there's all these factors that are coming into play. One of them is that City Hall has been told in no uncertain terms by property developers that they won't build anything for someone who earns less than $75,000 a year. So we've got property developers who refuse to build the housing we need for a large portion of our population, and we have a federal government that won't do it anymore, hasn't done it for decades, and we've got a provincial government that's trying to pick up the slack, and they don't have the resources, they're not willing to raise the taxes that much to do it. So it's been this slow slide. It's not the only thing. We've got a lot of other things that have been happening that caused this, but like literally that, right back to it again, that argument that we have to cut services, we can't raise taxes, we can't spend the money, the city can't do it alone. So many of the promises around housing, when you look at the platforms, it's like, we'll do this, and then in tiny writing underneath,
but it's the province's problem.
If the provinces and the federal government help us, and it's like, well, they haven't been helping us for almost 40 years, so why would they start?
Oh wow, I didn't know it was that bad.
It's that bad, it's that long. So, you know, developers aren't going to do it, federal government doesn't want to do it. And the provincial government social housing,
stunned.
The provincial government social housing, I'm sorry, a lot of it feels like it's prison system light. You know, you've got people at the front, you've got, you know, gated entry, you've got cameras everywhere.
That's the type of building that I live in, and you know, like, to be honest, the previous owner, the security quit because they were afraid. And so we were left for like a couple of months with no security whatsoever. And that was quite scary. But at the same time, now I feel like I live in a hospital a little bit, because they'll do things that are important for the downtown east side, but like not everyone is the same. Not everyone is, you know, like I'm an unexpected, you know, like what are you doing here kind of thing. Like, I'm none of your business, I'm poor. This place is cheap. But it is kind of intense, because it does feel like a facility and not my home anymore.
I went to Dornoch over near Oppenheimer Park,
Yeah.
just yesterday. And it's I think it's a city-run facility, but not a city-owned building. And one of the residents let us in because he's a supporter, and we got stopped right at the front. What are you doing here? And it's like, well, I'm a candidate for city council, and we're here to knock on doors. Well, we don't know if you can do that. That doesn't sound like that's something that you can legally do. It might be a conflict of interest. So we waited 5 minutes. Some calls were made. They realized they had to let us in, so they did. But the person in charge, who didn't identify herself, she said, okay, well, you need to understand some things. These people here, they don't want you here. They're very aggressive. They're going to get angry.
Like we're
They're
animals?
going to swear at you. Be very kind and don't push buttons and just move along. And I was like, I've been doing this. I didn't say this to her because I don't have time for that kind of crap.
Yeah.
But I've been doing elections now this is my third one. I did 2 in the downtown federal election, and I've knocked doors on social housing, and I've knocked doors on public housing, and I've found that people are, if not easier to speak with, they're at least among the most civil people that I've dealt with.
Like even in me doing my work and knocking on my neighbors' doors and talking to people want to talk about this. People want to be involved. People want to be included.
Yeah. And some of the richest stratas in the downtown are the places where I've faced abuse. I've had people swearing at me.
Yeah.
They've threatened to call the police. They've chased my election volunteers out of the building.
Yeah,
well,
unfortunately,
in the social housing.
We have huge problems in people that work in these social services and in our hospitals. There are a lot of abusive, power tripping individuals.
Yes.
Like I have some in my building right now that I have to, like I was explaining that I couldn't have my room check and something else happened in my apartment on the same day because it was just too many things, and she just interrupted me like I was in jail. Room checks are mandatory, and I'm like, man, you've seen me. I'm the cleanest person in this building. Why are you treating me like this?
Yeah.
So
because she can.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
It's really something about that has to change as well.
Well, and so this is not, I think that this will lead to better changes for all people, but because of my background and because of some work I did last year, I'm pushing to have an independent officer of the city appointed called the Representative for Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit People.
Yes.
And she's got a bunch of roles, but 2 of the roles that are most important is she has the ability to appear as a witness or an intervener in child apprehension cases and argue to a judge that the province is trying to take children when it's not necessary because her office provides the services.
Which is
other
shocking
agencies,
that that's still a thing.
Yeah, provide the service. Oh, it's a huge thing. There are more children now, more Indigenous children in foster care now than 2016. It was 52% of children in foster care were Indigenous in 2016. It's 53% today. It's gone up in the last 6 years. So that's important. The other thing that she can do is she has the power to investigate any department of the city on an allegation of harm towards Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. And if she finds that the harm is happening and that the allegation is justified, she can write a report that details the harm. It gives her recommendations to stop it from happening, and it's delivered publicly to City Council at a City Council meeting, and everyone in the city has access to the report, so everybody can see what they're being told needs to happen, and if they choose not to do it, that's on them, and we'll remember that as voters. Now, that's going to help Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people, but they need the help in part because they're among the marginalized, the poor, the people struggling in this city. And if we create a voice at City Hall that's arguing against that kind of oppression and harm happening to them, it's also going to spill over to the rest of the people that are suffering too. And my great hope is, we made that recommendation, myself and some other lawyers, to the city of Saskatoon, and they accepted it. which shocked us. Politicians accepting actual accountability.
Amazing.
Fantastic. That was December of 2021. 2 days after I confirmed that the money was put in the budget, because I don't trust politicians saying they're going to do it. I checked the budget, and there was a
Nerd power.
line item, and I was like, yeah, it's being done. 2 days later, Jean Swanson called and asked me to run for COPE. She's asked me to run for COPE 6 times since 2019.
Wow.
Every time I've turned her down, because all of my work as a lawyer and my work as an Indigenous manager before becoming a lawyer, it was all related to the federal government. That's where all my experience is. That's why I've run in federal elections.
Right.
But then we did this great thing in Saskatoon, and I saw I can do something good for the city, and we need that here. So I told her about it, and I said, Jean, if you'll promise that COPE will update its platform to include that representative for Vancouver, then I'll run. And she did, and here I am running.
Amazing.
And we wanna make change for the city, and if we need to consider having accountability officers for other marginalized groups in the city, so that there's a real voice. And the reason she has to be independent, and the reason she has to be appointed, is we've already got politicians who are elected who aren't getting enough done. We've already got employees, bureaucrats, who are in jobs for as long as they want to be. They're not getting it done. The reason they're not getting it done, the elected people are worried about getting reelected. The people that are staff are worried about their jobs, and they want to keep their jobs. Someone who's appointed on a 4-year term, they know exactly how much time they've got, and they know that they can't be kicked out no matter what they do or say, and they can just go hard against this oppression for 4 years. And if the appointment process should make good sense. Like, I would like to see the city agree, if we can make this thing happen. There's that train making some noise for the If I can get elected and we've got the right split and we get that representative motion forward, I'd like to see consultation with the host nations and the Indigenous population, the urban Indigenous population. I would like them to do the appointment, not City Council. I mean, if anybody on City Council, then whoever the Indigenous councillors are. But it should be Indigenous women and girls and their nations primarily that are appointing the person, because we know best who's just gonna speak truth to power and do the right thing. And we don't want someone who's appointed who's just gonna be a token Indian. And I'm saying that as an Indigenous person. We don't want a token Indian who's just gonna say what everybody wants to hear. We want somebody who's gonna say, no, this is wrong, this shouldn't be happening, you need to fix it. Here's how you do it. Now show us that you mean it.
Yeah, absolutely. You've kind of answered a lot of my questions anyway. So, but one extra one that I'm just kind of personally curious, what is it like working with Jean Swanson? She's kind of a legend.
Jean's fantastic.
Yeah.
Jean is an incredibly humble person, and she doesn't want to take credit for anything. She doesn't want to be a leader in the sense of I'm gonna tell you what to do. I've seen her time and again go into groups in the downtown east side and other parts of the city, and she just asks them, what can I do for you? Use the power of my office. Tell me what we need to do. Right now, we're talking with groups in the downtown east side about safe supply. And we want safe supply.
Yeah, I know she's big on that. Yeah.
We want to do it right, and we do it right by listening to the people who know the most and then going with them. We don't do it right by listening to the cops. We don't do it right by listening to Kennedy Stewart.
Not,
we don't do it right by listening to the a lot of authorities in so-called authorities in the matter. I'm a firm believer you go to the source, you go to the people who know what they need, and you ask them. Jean does that. And the last thing I'll say about Jean, I only learned about this recently. CBC recognized her as the how would they put it? She was the most effective city councillor. She passed she put forward 50 motions in the last city council, more than any other councillor, and almost all of them passed.
Wow.
And the reason they almost all passed is because Jean doesn't play politics. She doesn't play party ideology. She talks to people. She negotiates with them. She tries to find common ground. She gives a little when she knows that that's the only way to make things happen. And so she's been one of the most effective city councilors we've had in a long time. And she's going to get elected again. There's no doubt she's going to get elected again.
She's a gem.
Yeah, I'm really hopeful that we can get one or two more COPE people on there, like myself or Tanya Webcame.
Well, you know what? I didn't do this on purpose. I didn't go by party. I didn't go by people's faces. And then I saw a post from COPE, and I looked at the faces, and I was like, oh, I put every single one of you on my list. All of you across the board. So yeah, that's got to count for something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I mean, everybody does it differently. On the other hand, I had somebody tell me the other day, I voted for you, Breen, and I'm like, that's great. Who else do you vote for? No one.
Yeah.
What? Wait, what?
Shit.
What? I went in, I put a circle, filled in the circle by your name, done. And I'm like, okay, well, thanks for your support. You know, everybody's got a different idea of how to do it. And you know, that's fine. But I think the thing that we always have to look at is like, okay, who are these people? What have they done? What are they doing? What do they plan to do?
Yeah.
And try to ask, like, it's hard because people want to compromise, and compromise can be good. But if somebody's like doing something that you really can't get behind, don't compromise, vote for them. To me, that's the wrong way to do it. It's better to say, my ballot's got 9 on it right now. I can't find the 10th person. So the reason I haven't voted in the advance yet, I always vote in advance because the lines are so long on October 15th.
Yeah.
It's much faster. But I haven't voted in the advance yet because I'm still trying to figure out if I can find a 10th person that isn't doing something that I really disagree with.
It's same, especially in the mayoral one. Like I'm holding out to speak to some of the people, so I think I'll be voting on the 15th as well. I wanted to do it tomorrow, but then I realized it's just not. I'm not ready to make my list yet.
No, not me either. But you know, that's fine. We got time.
Yeah, exactly. We got time. Anyway, your name, what you're running for, your party, and how to find you on the internet.
My name is Breen Ouellette. My party is COPE, the Coalition of Progressive Electors. I'm running for people, which means rent control, a mansion tax so that we can build affordable and social housing in this city for as long as necessary. If it takes 20 years, we need that mansion tax for 20 years. And I can be found on Twitter at Breen Ouellette, which you'll probably not be able to spell, or
it's on the site. Make sure.
CopeVancouver.ca is the website. And I'm not on Instagram because somebody reported me and got my account banned. And I still haven't even gotten a reason for why it was banned. I'm just off Instagram.
You're a pretty offensive guy. So.
I know, like it's mostly like videos of me and my baby on Instagram because I'm like, how do I get people to listen to me talk about politics? So it's like, oh, cute baby.
We let the babies.
So it's like, I'm like, my favorite Instagram is like, I get up in the morning and Antoine's playing with toys and I'm like, I'm gonna record this. So I'm like, hey everybody, it's me and Antoine. We're just playing here this morning, having a good time. Don't forget to defund the police.
What a great little politician. Okay. Thank you so much for your time, Breen.
Thank you.